Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Kevin. I'd like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar series episode. Today we are partnering with Next Limit Technologies to discuss the yet-to-be-released Maxwell Render V3. This much-anticipated release of Maxwell Render will be previewed for you by one of Maxwell's own experts, Mihai Iliuta. Together we'll walk you through the advancements in V3, which include speed improvements and dozens of new features, from procedural textures, volumetrics, object cloners, special lens models, and many more. For those of you who don't know who Mihai is, Mihai has been a dedicated Maxwell Render user since the very first alpha releases in 2004. For the past few years, he had been working for Next Limit Technologies, providing technical support as well as overseeing the beta testing of Maxwell Render releases. Today's presentation is about 40 minutes long, and afterwards we'll have a brief Q&A session where Mihai will answer your questions live. So feel free to submit your own to us at any time into the chat window below. But before we get going with today's presentation, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. The Novedge webinar series is brought to you by Novedge.com. As one of the largest online design software stores, we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. If you are interested in picking up the latest version of Maxwell Render Suite 2.7, it is available in the United States from us at Novedge as a digital delivery. And we'll be sure to have the latest release sometime in November on our product page and catalog page as well. So if you want to learn more about this and the rest of our Next Limit catalog, you are welcome to call and speak with our sales specialist, Bob Baer. You can reach him by his email address, bob@novedge.com. And to get a glimpse at who's changing the world of design one step at a time, please visit Novedge's very own blog. Every week, our interviews shine a light on those innovators whose work break out from the norm. And I do want to mention that answers from your webinar questions will be shared here as well. So for more details, please visit us at blog.novedge.com. And to stay up to date with what's happening in the design industry, along with Novedge's latest webinars and product promos, do like us on Facebook. Coming up next week, Michael Gunther Geffers sets up a model in a realistic environment and will assign materials in an easy way using VSR real-time renderer. Variants of material assignments will be discussed, environments and views will be created and restored with single mouse clicks. This is a preview of VSR Shape Modeling 3.0 beta as well, and will be shown demonstrating that it is possible to model geometry in a very in a real-time environment, sorry. To sign up for this free event, head on over to novedge.com/webinar/92. And last but not least, if you have to leave early, no worries. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if you want to rewatch this episode in its entirety, as always, you can find it on our Novedge webinar series channel through Vimeo and YouTube. With that said, Mihai, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Cool. All right. Let me find you here, and you are officially the presenter right about now. All right. Enjoy, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Let's see. So hopefully people can see my screen now. And thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully you'll get some nice feelings about Maxwell version 3 after seeing this preview. I just want to mention that picture you saw of me is a really old one, and I'm a lot fatter now, so it's just as a detail. So to get started, let me bring up the PowerPoint. So I'm going to go through all these features. We have about 20 main new features in version 3, so I have to go through them pretty fast to cover most of them. And please keep in mind that it's still a beta, so you'll see maybe some glitches and so on, but almost everything works. So to get started, the first thing I want to show you are the new volumetrics. So for example, in this image it's just some trees like a forest, and I put a volumetric object, a constant volumetric object that surrounds these trees, and just the sound from the physical sky. I'll show you a little bit in studio what this looks like, so you'll see it's pretty easy to set up, and you can apply any Maxwell materials to the volumetric object and so on. Here's another example of a library. This is actually the old an old library in Paris, where you can see some sunbeams coming in here. So it's another constant volumetric object that surrounds this entire library, and it adds a lot to the lighting, even in the areas where you're not really seeing any volumetrics, so to speak, but it still adds a nice glow to the light. You can feel the light a lot better. And yes, you can also do clouds with the volumetrics. Here's an example of a real flow particle file with volumetrics applied to it and a usual Lambert material and the physical sky. So it's real easy to set up. You don't need any special shaders for the volumetrics, and this is already a pretty good looking cloud which you can get very quickly with our volumetric system. So for now you have basically three types of volumetrics. You have a constant, which is like a constant volume which you can put around to encompass your scene, or it's basically a cube that holds this constant volumetric cloud, so to speak. There's also noise 3D, which is just like the constant, only it also adds a procedural noise to this constant field, so you can have more variation in the density of the volumetrics. And third, you can also use particle files. For now, we support bin files from RealFlow, but also particle files exported in Alembic format. And it works with any Maxwell material applied to the volumetric object, so you can even apply a transparent object, for example, if you want. But mostly, it works okay with just a simple Lambert, a white Lambert, or a green Lambert if you want green smoke, for example. And it's also going to render fastest with a Lambert material in most cases. It's important to point out that after version 3, we're going to add support for density fields or voxels. And we're thinking of either Field 3D format or OpenVDB, or maybe both. For now, though, when version 3 is going to be released, we're going to support density fields or voxels exported from Maya. So from Maya fluids or Maya particles, and also from Softimage. So you can still use those voxels directly, even if we don't have yet support for Field 3D or OpenVDB. Let me see if I can show you a little bit this scene in Studio. So hopefully you see my screen now. So this is that forest scene I was doing before, and just to explain to you the scene setup. So here's my volumetric object. So right now it's set to constant. Okay, so to add a volumetric object to your scene, and this is going to work in the same way in the plugins, you just right-click and choose Create Extension Object. So the Maxwell Volumetric is an extension object. You click it, you add it to your scene, and you can choose here which type of volumetric object you want, particle-based, constant, or noise 3D. And then you can just move it around like any other object. You can scale it. For example, now it's 100 meters big, right? And then you can add a material to it, just like any other object, right? And that's your volumetric. Basically, that's how I built this scene. You can see that it sort of touches the tips of the trees. Let me see if I can move it slower so you can keep up with it. Okay. Okay, and then the sun is the physical sky is coming here from the left. And that's basically it. The whole material here is just a simple, very simple 1BSDF material. You can see here on the left, with some anisotropy just to make those rays a bit more prominent. We're going to mention that in the documentation, how to make different materials for the volumetrics. So basically that was it for the scene to get this very nice effect, like a dawn morning type of light. Okay, so moving on really quickly. Another very cool feature is the fast multi-light preview that we have added in version 3, which means that now you're no longer limited to that little that little preview window you had in version 2 and previous versions. Now you can see any multi-light changes or scattering or diffraction. You can see them in the main render window, and it's instantaneous, which is really cool. However, if you change the ISO and shutter speed, these need to be evaluated separately. So there's a little lag if you change the ISO or shutter speed, but these things, the multi-light scattering, diffraction, that's instantaneous, and that's really cool. I want to show you an example here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now. Okay, so this is actually showing also another new feature, which is the Maxwell Sea. I'll mention that in a little bit. So now, for example, I can change, as you can see, I can change the IBL in real time. And maybe you can't see this so good in your own window, but I can assure you that it's happening in real time in the main render view. Okay, so you have multi-light changes in real time. And also if I change the scattering, for example, okay, those are happening in real time as well in the main render view. So this is really cool. You no longer have to wait, especially for scattering, to see that small little render preview. Okay. Okay, and this is actually happening, it's accelerated by the GPU, so this fast multi-light preview is accelerated by your graphics card. So you are dependent on the memory of your graphics card. So if you have a huge MXI, then probably that's not going to fit in a 1 GB RAM video card. You need one of those newer video cards with maybe 6 GB or 4 GB. But with this size of MXI, I think this is, well, it's sort of medium size MXI. You can see that it fits in my video card, which only has 1 GB of RAM, and everything is instantaneous. Okay, so moving on. We now also support the OpenSubdivs from Pixar. Okay, so you can see here this truck model, which is obviously not subdivided, and then you can subdivide it at render time, which is really cool because it saves you a lot of space in your MXS files. If you have an animation with many objects moving around, you can do the subdivision at render time, so that's really cool. And we support all the options from the OpenSubdiv, including loop subdivision for triangular meshes, or also the Cadmel-Clark method for quads. And you can also do edge creases, for example. And I can show you that really quickly. It's very easy. You can add it to any object. So here I'm showing everything in Studio, just because it's a common platform, but it's going to work in the same way in the plugins. Okay, so it's an object property. So you right-click the object and choose Apply Object Modifier Extension. subdivision modifier. Okay, so here in the modifiers list, you can choose the level of subdivision, the method, Cadmill, Clark, or loop, and also how to interpolate the UVs. That's sometimes important when you subdivide. So if you see any strange things when you subdivide, then just change the UV interpolation method, and also edge creases. Okay, so that's basically it, and now this cube is subdivided, and this is really very helpful also if you use Maxwell with displacement, because as you know, before we had some problems, especially with ZBrush displacements, because you really need to subdivide your model at least one time or two times before you apply the displacement map. So now you can easily do that and still keep your MXS scene very light, So it's as easy as that. Moving on to next. See, I have too many windows open. And by the way, I'm running this on an i7 2600, so it's a pretty old i7, and I have two of the cores doing the webinar thing. So it's not the fastest machine exactly. All right, so that's the subdivision surfaces. This is really interesting for you new guys, but especially probably they're going to add support for this in After Effects as well. But for now, these so-called deep files are only supported in Nuke, but it's a really cool feature because it allows you to have a sort of a depth information in your renders, which allows you to composite your scene with this depth information, which makes it really easier to composite scenes. You don't have those edge artifacts anymore. It's really easy to isolate objects that are in different depths of your scene. So for example, in this simple scene here, you can see that this is what the render looks like, okay? And the output in this EXR deep format allows you to open that MXI file, or EXR file, sorry, in Nuke, and you have all this depth information. You can isolate these objects, and you can also composite a different render, on top of these objects that you can see here, and they're going to fit perfectly. You're not going to have any edge artifacts or deal with such problems anymore. Okay, so this is really cool for you compositors out there, and hopefully, Adobe is going to add support for this in After Effects. I mean, it's pretty probable, but for now, only Nuke can read these files, and you can output them both in EXR deep format or in DTeX format. And you can choose to output only the alpha, so this deep alpha format, or full RGBA EXR files or DTeX files. Next, we've also added support for Alembic, and for now we support objects, cameras, particles, and material assignments inside the Alembic files. So of course you can have multiple Alembic files for each frame, or you can have an object that's animated and all its frames are contained inside one Alembic file. So we support both these methods. And we also support the ExoCortex Crate Alembic Suite, which is a really nice plugin for Maya, Softimage, 3D Max, and Houdini, I think. So we're compatible with their Alembic import and export format. And I mean, if you want to read more about Alembic, if you don't know what it is, if it's the first time you hear about it, it's a really efficient way to store geometry, most of all. So you can think of it as sort of like MXS references, except the Alembic files can contain multiple frames, okay, of your object. So if your object is animated, you can contain that whole animation inside of one single Alembic file, which is stored very efficiently, so it takes up not so much space on your hard drive. Next, of course, are the procedurals. So in this render, for example, there isn't a single texture used here. So you can see it works also with displacement. We have a few different procedural textures coming out now in version 3.0. And of course it makes it a lot easier to create these nice plastics. You get these noise, this bump from noise procedural. We have some grid procedurals, Voronoi. This is a marble procedural, and so on. We also have a brick procedural, so it makes it really nice for brick walls, non-repeating patterns. So for now we have these types, including a wireframe procedural. And it's important to know that this is the first implementation, so to speak, of procedurals, and we have a lot of cool stuff coming after version 3, soon after version 3. So for example, you can do stuff like drive the I don't know, drive the noise, for example, with the distance from the camera, or do procedural nodes, procedural networks, so you can drive different things in the material itself. For example, with particles, you can drive the color of a particle. You can drive that with the speed of the particles, and so on. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming after version 3 regarding procedural textures, but for now you have these to work with, and I mean they're still pretty useful for now. Let's see if I have the questions. Next up are the new lenses. So this is an example of a spherical lens we added. So you can now easily do 360 renders, which are useful for mainly two reasons. One reason is you could take this and use it as an HDR illumination, so that, for example, if you have a character walking around in this scene, you don't have to render the entire interior for every frame. You can just use this as an HDR environment light, thus saving you a lot of render time. And of course, also you can do walkthroughs for your website. So you can take this image and do a a 360 visit of an interior or such things. So the new lenses are spherical lens, which you saw, a fisheye lens, which is pretty cool to use in for character animations. You get the typical fisheye distortion. A pinhole lens, which is, many users have asked us, how can I do render without the depth of field? Sometimes I don't want the depth of field if I'm rendering small rings or such things. So now you have this lens, the pinhole lens, which is not going to give you any depth of field. Okay, and of course you also have the orthographic lens, which is good for you architects out there. Now you can just render directly to orthographic view. Right. Sorry. So those are the new lenses, and maybe I should just show you quickly in Studio. So it's really easy. It's just from the camera properties. You can choose here under the optics section. Okay, you can choose the lens type here. Okay, so pinhole, thin lens is the usual lens that we use so far, and the other ones are here. And I think I forgot to mention cylindrical. You also have a cylindrical lens. Okay. And for example, if I switch to orthographic view, you also get a preview of that in the viewport, so that's pretty useful. Okay, moving on. we have light projectors. So this is a very cool feature where you can, it sort of works exactly like a slide projector. Okay, you have an emitter object as usual, but now you can add a bitmap image that's going to be projected onto a wall or your geometry, and you can even use procedural textures, so you're not limited to just using bitmap images to project light. You can also use the procedural textures, and this is really cool. At least I think this is really cool. The procedural textures can be used as projectors. So I'm going to show you that quickly in scene. I can move all the windows out of the way. Let me see. Okay, so here's your typical Cornell scene, and I have a small emitter here at the top. Okay, and it just has a regular emitter material applied to it. You can see here that under the lobe parameter here, you can have it either set as default. Okay, so if I start a render, let me just check to see that you can still hear me properly. Okay, so I'm just using 75% of the CPU. Okay, so this is just a regular emitter, and now you can switch it to bitmap. And here I've added a procedural texture, which is going to project it. It's going to project its pattern from that emitter into the scene. Okay, if I open up the map here, this is the new texture picker. You can see here that I've added a grid procedural, okay, to that emitter. And this is what it looks like, and now it's projecting that procedural texture. And you can make it more or less focused simply by changing the size of the emitter. So for example, if I make it 4 times bigger, okay, now you can see that the grid pattern is much more out of focus simply by making that emitter bigger. You can even make it a lot bigger. And now you can see that it's really out of focus. And just to show you with an image as well, so I can remove this procedural and load maybe this image here. So you can see what that looks like. And now I need to make the lamp small again so the image is in focus. Okay, and you can see the image. And if you don't want it tiled like this, it's just a simple matter of choosing it, opening the texture picker and choosing no tiling. Okay, so if I choose no tiling, now you can see that it's just showing it the image exactly like a slide projector, basically. And just to show you with volumetrics, that looks pretty cool. Okay, so here I have just a volumetric constant object that's surrounding my entire Cornell box. So you can see the light beam here. So this is really cool. And just to show you rendering in Maxwell. And I mean, people say Maxwell is slow, but look at this. I mean, it's making volumetric caustics. You know, it's also making caustics from this glass knot on the floor. And I'm rendering on an i7 2600. You know, so it's not exactly slow, considering everything that it's doing. Right. So those are light projectors. Close this. Okay, so everything I mentioned about focusing. Next up is a brand new extension called Maxwell Sea. So this is the previous render you saw. And this is pretty cool because being an extension, well, it uses the same ocean statistical spectrum ocean solver that's found in RealFlow. And being an extension object, what's cool about it is that you can actually use it, for example, in SketchUp as well. And SketchUp wasn't exactly built to to have this kind of geometry inside of it. But you can still use it because being an extension object, you can just load it in your scene, and even if maybe you won't be able to see it in the SketchUp viewport because it's not really meant to show such things, you can still use it and scale it and render with it, or including SolidWorks, for example. So just to show you a little bit how it works. I have a scene for that. I can see the, oh, there it is, the audience view. I can make sure that you guys see this. Okay, so being an extension object, you can see in the studio viewport, you can see the actual geometry of it. But this geometry is only generated at render time. Okay, so in this scene, this extension object takes almost no space. So you can have a really big, really detailed sea, and it's only going to take a few kilobytes more in your MXS scene. This is just for viewing in the viewport. Okay, so you can see that already with this quality level, it's still pretty detailed. It still has quite a lot of geometry. You can go all the way up to this quality level, which is going to be pretty unusual. So let me do a fire render of this. Okay, so as always, you can apply any material to this extension object here. I just applied a sort of additive plastic type, which works pretty well, actually. And a few of the controls of the Maxwell Sea, so you can control the quality. You can control the reference time, so when you're working in your main 3D app, you can actually animate this, and it looks really cool. You can choose the vertical scale of the waves. So for example, if I raise the vertical scale, it's going to make more bigger waves. And the vertical scale is actually very dependent on the dimension setting you have here. So right now it's 50, meaning this patch of sea represents 50 meters of sea. And if I raise it, so if I make it 100, then that's going to also affect how the scale looks. So then you have to lower the vertical scale if you raise the dimension. Okay, so you have a bigger dimension, bigger patch of sea, you have to be careful with the vertical scale. Okay, so you can see it's pretty cool. It's a very nice detailed results even at this quality level, so I can double it. You can see it's going to make a little bit more detail. And let me see. Well, you can play around with the choppiness. That's going to make those sharp crests or not. So if you remove it, then you're going to have more like a blobby sea if you want. But for realism, usually you want to have the choppiness on. So you make those sharp crests where the waves meet. Right, so this is pretty cool for you people rendering boats and stuff like that. It's a very capable sea simulation, which, like I said, it's pretty amazing that you can also use it. You can probably gonna use it in SolidWorks and SketchUp or Forms. Why not? Since it's an extension object. Can this be used for a pool? Yeah, sure, you can use it for a pool. Any surface, any water surface, you can use it for that. And again, it's not storing any geometry, this heavy geometry, it's not storing it in your MXS file, it's just going to generate it at render time, so it's not going to take up any more space in your MXS file. You can't add foam to the water right now. It works inside RealFlow, so if you have RealFlow, then it generates the foam maps, but so far it doesn't work in this extension. Okay, next up, this is really an improvement, but it's a really important one with a motion blur and hair, but actually it's valid for any type of scene where you have many objects that have heavy motion blur. You know, many instances, for example, it's going to be a lot faster, and we actually have tests where it's up to 100 times faster than version 2. Okay, and it's a real world test. In this example, it's not such a heavy example, but even here, it's up to 10 times faster. So this cat has about almost 700,000 hairs, and it's a sort of medium motion blur because it's not such a heavy motion blur. You can see here on the head, it's a bit heavier. But even here, it's 10 times faster, which means instead of 7.5 hours, it's only 45 minutes in version 3. And I think that's pretty impressive, actually. So now you should be able to render, you know, scenes with lots of characters, with hair and heavy motion blur. It's going to be super fast now. Fire, you're going to like this a lot. I know everybody uses Fire, and you asked this many times. So, you know, when you have a heavy scene and you only move one emitter, then it has to re-voxelize the whole scene, and now it's going to voxelize it, you know, almost instantly if you just move one object. So just to show you this first, I'm going to compare with version 2 so you see how much faster it is. Okay, so what you're seeing here, this is version 2 of Studio, and this is how it currently works. And here I have a pretty heavy model. You've probably seen this on the forums. It's made by Nico. So he modeled this in SolidWorks, and it's a pretty heavy model. Okay, and now, for example, if I want to move this emitter to relight the scene, okay, so I move it here. Okay, and now I have to wait. It's revoxelizing the entire scene. So you can imagine if I had 50 of these in the scene, it's going to be pretty annoying to work with the lighting. Okay, so if I move it up there, I have to wait again. Wait. And there, it's updated. Okay, so that's pretty annoying. So let's take a look in version 3. Okay, so now I have the exact same scene in version 3. If I start Fire. Now, first of all, you can also see that the voxelization is faster, the interaction is faster, and now if I move this emitter, you can see that bam, it's instant basically. Okay, so I move it up, poof, it's instant. Okay, so it's it's really a nice improvement in Fire, and I think lots of people are gonna go crazy just for this feature. You know, so no matter if I had 10 of these in the scene and I just move the emitter, it's gonna be the same speed because it just voxelizes this part here. So that's really cool. It's a really nice improvement. No, it works for scaling objects as well. Okay, you can see it's still instant. So if I scale it up, down, it's still pretty much instant. I can rotate it. It's still instant because it's only going to revoxelize that part of the scene. Yeah, and I can also clone it. And boom, now it's pretty instant as well. Okay. Wow, already 40 minutes. Okay, I have to move fast here.
We can take a little bit longer.
So that's the new Fire voxelization. Sorry.
No, we can keep going. It's all good. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay. Another new feature we call material types. So what we've done here is basically simplify the UI a lot, but behind the scenes it's still the same advanced material editor. But you know, a lot of new users tell us that the most difficult part about learning Maxwell are the materials. Okay, so we try to first of all categorize them in common material, you know, types, which are transparent, translucent, metal, opaque, which is like an opaque plastic, which you don't want any subsurface scattering in it, cloth, car paint. Okay, so I'm going to show you how these works. This is pretty cool actually, because even if you're an experienced Maxwell user, I think you're going to find that it's also faster to work with these material types, at least, you know, as a starting point. Okay, so here I'm just right-clicking in the material list. I'm choosing New, and here you can either choose Custom, which is the regular material UI, or you can choose Opaque, Transparent, Metal, Translucent. Okay, so for example, I choose Translucent because even experienced Maxwell users have problems working with the subsurface scattering. Okay, and you can see here all the parameters that this material type has. Sorry, let me change the scene. Okay, so for example, now you have the scale first of all, and if you change the scale, you're telling Maxwell that my object is bigger or smaller. So if you change the scale, it's going to have as a result that it makes your object look more dense or more transparent. So that's an overall parameter to change the density. You can change the color. So for example, you want a red translucent plastics. Okay, boom. You have a red translucent plastic. So let me change the okay, you want to make it denser, just diminish the scale. Now you have a denser plastic. Okay, you want a blue plastic instead, just change the color and there you have it. You want to change, for example, the basically the saturation, okay, the vibrance. You can lower the vibrance. Now you have a less saturated translucent, and so on. You know, change the surface roughness. So it's really fast to work with. And you notice here at the bottom you have a convert to advanced, so you can convert this type, you can convert it to the advanced material editor. You can see actually what it's done behind the scenes. Okay, so these material types, all they do is that behind the scenes they change all these parameters, but in a very simplified UI. Okay, so you don't have any loss of quality by working with these material types, because actually behind the scenes they change the same material parameters. Okay, and for example, you want to create a glass, you know, and let's say I want a tinted glass. Just change the color. Okay, if I want it less transparent, I lower the transparency. And so on. So it's really very fast to work with, and I think also experienced Maxwell users are gonna enjoy using these new material types. Okay, next up. Oh yeah, and by the way, they're non-modal, which means you can still change settings. You don't have to rerun the type. And also, it's easy to create your own presets. So if I show you here in the transparent type, okay, so you have a bunch of presets here for every type. So for example, I can go to green or brown bottle glass, okay, and it makes me that look. And you can also create your own presets here, which are really easy to do. It's basically editing a text file, so you can add as many presets here as you want. Okay. So for example, here's a preset for a diamond, emerald, and so on. Next up are exclusive lights, and this is a really cool feature for you people, especially doing product renders, packaging design and stuff like that. And here's a classic example. Before, for example, you wanted to have a certain lighting on the bottle, but then you wanted a different lighting on the label. So for the label, it's really important, that it's not blown out and that the text is visible and so on. So usually what you had to do is do 2 renders with 2 different lighting setups. Or in reality, photographers take 2 different photos, with 2 different lighting setups. So to show you how this works, it's really easy. Open up that bottle scene in Studio. Okay, so it's a pretty simple scene. You have a background. I have 2 emitters here, one left, one right, and a third emitter here to the left. Okay, and if I render this, okay, now for me, I think, okay, the lighting looks okay on the bottle, but now the label is too blown out. Okay, because of this big left emitter here. So what I can do is I can pick the label object, and here in the object's appearance section, you have the ability now to add an emitter that this object is going to ignore, basically. Okay, so I click add, and now I add the left emitter. Now watch what happens to the label. Okay, so now this big left emitter here, it's not going to be visible in the label anymore. Okay. And now, for example, I have this secondary reflection on the bottle, which I don't like, which is a bit distracting. So I can pick the bottle geometry and do the same thing. I can add this one, the leftmost emitter, I can remove it. Okay, so it's not going to be influencing the bottle anymore. You can still see here there's a little bit of reflection on it, and this reflection is actually coming from the ground plane. So I have to select the ground plane and also add that emitter to it to block it. Yeah, so you know, everything I show you here with these features in Studio, every one of them is going to be available in your plugin. Okay, so don't worry about that. It's not a Studio specific thing. I'm just showing you Studio because most of the plugins aren't finished yet to work with version 3. And it's also easier to show you in Studio because it's a common, you know, platform for everybody. But yeah, you know, exclusive emitters is going to work in all the plugins as well. Okay, so you can see it's very easy to work with. You can just add it here to the list of the object. Okay. So that's exclusive lights. Next up are custom alphas. This is another requested feature, and now you can have as many alpha layers as you want. And for each of these layers, you can choose which objects you want to add to those alpha layers. Okay, and just to show you quickly how to work with that, I think I had a scene. Yes. Oh, it's too many windows open. Okay, so to show you the custom alphas, you get to them from the render options. From the channels. So you can see it here at the bottom. I'm just going to wait for your view to update. Okay, so custom alphas, so you check it and then you click the custom alpha button. So again, this is going to work in the same way in your plugin. It's not a Studio specific thing. So first you add a alpha layer. So if I give it a name, okay, so let's say for example I want an alpha with just the red portion here. So I click it and then I select the objects that are going to be part of that alpha layer. So the body here. And then let's say I want these 3 chrome parts here. I want them to be also in another layer. So I create a new alpha layer and let's call it chrome. So I select it and now I add the objects. So it's the cup holder, it's the cover front, and the outlet. Okay, so now I have 2 alpha layers, and if I render this, I actually have also a material layer, but you can see the alpha here. It's just going to show me the last layer I had selected. But if I take a look at the output, let me just stop the render. So let's see here. Actually, I think I put the output correctly. Oh, right, it's a webinar. Okay, so here you can see the Chrome alpha channel. Okay, and here is the red alpha channel. Okay, so it's as easy as that. You can have as many layers, alpha layers, as you want now, and it's really flexible, nice. Yeah, somebody noticed the UV channel. Yeah, I'm gonna mention that as well. Yeah, we also added a UV channel, so that's pretty useful because you can retexture your object using that channel. There are some plugins that can use it. For example, in After Effects, I think there's a UV channel that can use it. So you can actually you know, put another image here, or you can slap an image here on the side here using this UV channel, and it's going to follow the UVs of the object using in 2D. So it's a pretty useful channel to have. Okay. Next up is the Backface materials. So this is pretty, you know, straightforward what it does. Now you can assign a separate material to the opposite side of your polygons, and this is really useful for many cases. These are two classical cases. For example, leaves. Now you can see that the right version is a lot more interesting because it has some color variation here, and usually leaves look very different from one side to the next. So usually you have to use two textures and apply maybe two different thin SSS materials to them. So now you can do that easily. And also for labels here, you know, you no longer have to actually model a thickness. This is just a single-sided polygon with two different materials for the front and the back of the polygons. And maybe I should just show you this quickly. As you can see, it's pretty easy to work with it. So let's say I have a red material for the front and a blue material for the back. So again, this is an object property. So you click the object and you go here to Backface material, and you can drag and drop the material like that, and you know, it's red on the front and blue on the back. Okay, and you can actually go pretty crazy with this. For example, you can make the back-facing material, I can make it invisible, you know. So now when I'm looking at this polygon from the front, I see the red material, and when I'm looking at back, it's invisible because this material is invisible. Or for example, I could have glass on the front side and metal on the other side, but really, in my opinion, it's best to stick to materials that are pretty much alike. You know, like in the example of the leaves here, you can have two thin SSS materials that have pretty much the same parameters. It's just the texture that's going to change. You know, that's going to probably work best in most cases. Okay, moving on. This is another new extension we added called Maxwell Scatter, which works very much like the grass extension, except that you can scatter any object that you like. You can even scatter referenced objects. Okay, let me show you a really quick scene of that. Okay, so here I have a scene with just a chair on a backdrop, but actually I applied this modifier, this extension to the background. So now this chair is scattered all over the backdrop. And if I select the grid, you can see that it has the Maxwell Scatter modifier attached to it or applied to it. And here you can choose the scatter density. Okay, so this is the object. You choose the object. Like I said, it can also be a referenced object. The scatter density, you can also apply a map for the scattering, the scale, random scale, variation in the scaling, variation in the rotation, Okay, so for example, if I say to 5 units per square meter, well, I'm going to get a lot more chairs. Yeah, so this could be pretty useful in many cases. I can imagine also for carpets, because before you were sort of limited to the grass blades for the carpets. Now you can model a really like detailed, you know, carpet hair or what to call it, and you can scatter that on the carpet, for example. You know, it's pretty easy. And again, since it's an extension object, you can use that in all the plugins. You know. Okay, so that's Maxwell Scatter. Do you think we have enough yet for an upgrade? Next, the additive fix. I mentioned this briefly before. This is a very important fix because it could actually add a lot of noise to your renders, and you know, the type of noise that never really disappeared from your scene. And especially if you had many additive layers with a bright base, you can see here that before the object started actually glowing, you can see here at the bottom of it, hopefully, that there's a lot more noise between the ground and the sphere, and this noise was really difficult to get rid of. And now, you know, you can add as many additive layers as you want, the base can be as bright as you want, it's not going to start glowing, and you get a lot less noise. You know, so in a way, you can see this as a speed improvement because, for example, if you had, you know, shiny walls of an interior in additive mode, or many shiny plastics, bright plastics, those gave you a lot of noise, which was very difficult to get rid of. And now you can, you know, this problem is completely gone. And it's also nice because it lets you have many different roughnesses on a material in additive mode to give a nice effect, and it's not a problem anymore, so you don't have to worry about additives anymore. And this took it was a really hard fix to do, but now it works perfectly, so this is really nice. It's a huge difference, as you can see. Yeah, and there are a few more things. We're going to have an extensions API, which we're going to release to developers, so you can, for example, build your own procedurals, build your own geometry shaders. It's going to be really flexible for developers or you know, technical directors. We've also added OpenEXR 2.0 output and also half-float output, because many people ask for 16-bit EXR because 32-bit was often, you know, overkill for for many compositing tests. As you saw, the new UV channel, the custom sun radius. So many people ask for this, actually very often, and let me see if I can build a quick scene to show you that. Yeah, many people are gonna freak out about just this little feature, because what it does is not only visually is the sun radius bigger, but also the shadows are gonna be less sharp. So you can now have, you know, shadows that are not super sharp from the physical sky. You don't have to mess with separate emitters and stuff like that. So let me see. Okay. So if I go to the environment, physical sky, and under sun here, you know, I can switch it from physical to custom and change the radius factor. So let's say I make it 3 times bigger. Okay, maybe 10 times bigger. Yeah. Okay, so now you can see that the shadow is not super sharp anymore. So you have really fine control over it now. You know, let's make it 6 maybe. Okay, so from the sun radius. And let me just show you here on the sea as well. But it's also visible in the viewport, so you can make those nice romantic sunset scenes now that you've been dying to make. Let's see if I make it, 10 times bigger. If I render that. And let's turn on the scattering. So again, because the scattering is now interactive, it's really cool. You can just change it while Maxwell is rendering and updates in real time. Yeah, so now you can have a cool Maxwell sunset. And, you can go crazy with this if you want. You can make it like a 50 times bigger if you choose to do that. Okay, and the overlay text, this is a pretty useful thing to have. So you can have a bunch of overlay text in your render to keep track of what you're rendering, what test you're doing. So this is available from the render options. Here, overlay text. So sunset, and you can also use macros here. So for example, I can use the scene name macro, and render time or time passed macro, and you can also have a background and choose if it's going to be at top, bottom. So now it added the actual name of the scene there. Yeah, so this is pretty cool to to play with. Yeah. Okay. What else? Object opacity. That's another object property. So no matter what material you have applied to the object, now you can change the object opacity or even animate it from your plugins. So if I add a cube, it's still a where is it? So it's an object property here in the appearance section, so I can make it 50% opaque if I wanted to, or 10%. So you can animate this as an easy way to make like disappearing objects in your scene. And finally, well, not finally, but forgot to mention, we have a new licensing system. So we're now using RLM for licensing, and this is pretty good news for people that have many instances of Maxwell installed. It's a lot easier to handle licensing. All the nodes of your several computers, they're going to get the license from a main license server computer. So hopefully there's going to be a lot less problems with licensing. For example, you're doing network rendering and you forgot to license one of the nodes and it's doing a watermark on your render. Hopefully now it's going to be a lot easier because the licensing is centralized on one machine and all the nodes are getting the license from that single computer. And finally, well, there are a lot of many small and not so small improvements which I don't have time to go through, but lots of improvements and bug fixes in network. In Studio, for example, you notice that it looks a little bit different. We have a lot less panels, and let's see if I open this scene, which has a lot of instances. Now, for example, we have just a main scene tree here, which you can get to the render options, the environment options, camera options, And you can see that we have a main attributes panel, which changes depending on what you select here. You know, an object, render options, and so on. And for example, in this scene, I have a lot of instances. It was really awkward to work with instances before, because you had to first select an object and you have a separate instances list, and now they're basically treated as regular objects and they appear here in the scene tree. So instances also, you know, you can just select them and move them around as a regular object, as a group of instances, like that. A new material list, which you can choose either the list as usual or thumbs. You can choose the have extra large thumbs if you want. You can choose the, in the material editor, you can choose to have it, the preview here, a larger preview if you want, or a smaller preview. We also simplified the global properties. For example, the resource browser now reads all kinds of files. So it reads, you know, HDR files, which you can also drag and drop directly in your scene and so on. So yeah, a lot of improvements in there as well. Right. So I think that's it.
Yeah,
only 10 minutes past the time. Huh?
But yeah, let's take a look at some of the questions, because I think if we take about 10 minutes, I don't think there's a way for us to answer 99 questions, over 99 questions. But let's just look through it. Yeah. So I'll let you start off first, Mihai. Is there anything that caught your eye in particular that you want to answer first, or?
Let me see. Well,
let's see. Oh, okay. I got this one from Nicholas. Oh. Go ahead.
Can the volumetric lighting be output as a separate pass? No, it's part of the main render. UDIM textures, yeah, we talked about that already, and probably we're going to support the you know, the texture, the UV tiles, probably the way Mari implements them. Yeah. Yes, the fast multi-light preview uses OpenCL, so it works both on NVIDIA and ATI cards. Yeah. So if you plan on getting that new super impressive Mac Pro, it's going to work on those dual ATI cards as well, yeah.
All right, so I see this one from Patrick. Is the projector light kind of light with parallel beams? Is it suitable for simulating laser or alternate disco sun, which beams are almost parallel? That's at 1133.
Not really, because it's not actually focusing the light. It's not actually changing the angle. But we talked about that as well, and probably we're going to add some sort of focusing control to the emitters at some time after the version 3 release. For now, you can sort of mimic a spotlight using the procedural textures, because we have like a circular procedural texture that you can also blur the edges. So you can mimic a spotlight easier now using that, but it's still not focusing the light. So we're probably going to add that post V3.
Cool.
Like a focusing of the light.
Sounds
good. So it works sort of like a dado light. So if anybody knows what a dado light is, it's going to probably work like that.
Right. I see this one from Daniel. He is curious as to whether or not you can export the sea geometry as a mesh via OBJ.
Well, we talked about that as well, and we're not too sure what to do here, because it's sort of like a proprietary thing, and we're not sure if people should be able to export that as an OBJ. So we're not sure for now. It's not possible though.
Okay, so maybe a few more questions. How about, so Alexander wants to know, only moving objects or scaling and adding to? I think this is towards...
Yeah, I think I showed that it works for scaling as well, so it's pretty much instantaneous as well. So if you rotate, move, scale. If you add an object, on the other hand, I think it still needs to revoxelize the scene, but it really, I think that happens a lot less often that you add an object compared to moving and scaling and rotating.
Okay. Steve wants to know, can the volumetric lighting be output as a separate pass? Is your flake on the car paint?
No, it can't. It's part of the main render channel. Right. It's not a pass per se because it reacts to the whole GI in the scene. So if you add an emitter, that's going to react with your volumetric pass between brackets, so to speak. You know, it's part of the scene, just as the regular lighting.
Okay, let's do one last one. Sorry. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I see George, he has an interesting question. What about animated movie textures? Can we simulate a movie projector by using a movie as the texture of the light projector? Yes, you can do that because, for example, in I don't know, in the Cinema 4D plugin or 3D Max, Maya, what have you, you can actually load a sequence of images as your bitmap texture. You know, so in that way, yeah, it's gonna work like an animated movie projector. It's no problem.
All right. Okay. In this case, before we go over time, I just want to let everybody know that we're probably going to end the Q&A, but we're going to take all these questions and then create a blog post at blog.novedge.com. How about that? Mihai, have you even had a chance?
Thanks for that. It's just going to take me 2 days to go through all the questions.
Better call the department.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to try to answer most of them. Yeah.
I hope you had at least a chance to sip a cup of water or something during the presentation.
Yeah, I have take a sip, yeah.
Cool. So I'll say I'll switch back to me as presenter and then give you a bit of a break because that was a very, very detailed presentation. Covered a lot of things. So yeah, if you guys missed anything, you guys can definitely rewatch it on our channel at youtube.com and Vimeo as well. So, but yeah, thank you guys for attending. Thank you, Mihai, for like staying up so late. It's probably around like 9 p.m. right now.
Yeah, oh no, it's not late. I usually go to bed about 3 a.m. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, thanks for people joining, and I hope you found it interesting and that you found there's enough new cool stuff we added that you're gonna upgrade to version 3.
Yes,
really a cool version, I think.
Cool. And then for our friends in the States, some of you guys are in Oakland, some of you guys in Cleveland. Novedge.com, we are one of the largest online design software stores. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions, design solutions. So if you guys are looking to pick up a version, the current version of Maxwell Render Suite, or when V3 comes out, it is available from us as a digital delivery. So if you guys want to learn more you can check out our Next Limit catalog. You can always contact our sales specialist, Bob, there at Novedge.com. That's right, Bob at Novedge.com. Last but not least, since you guys had so many questions, another way to get your answers answered, Mihai's at the forums as well. So if you guys want to check that out, it's at maxwellrender.com/forum. It's a great way. I mean, there's like tutorials, frequently asked questions, and a lot of resources are available there as well. So moving on, like I said earlier, check out our facebook.com if you guys want the latest information about product promos. When V3 comes out, we'll probably spread the news over there on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Novedge. And the Q&A blog posts, all 99 questions of them will be posted and shared at blog.novedge.com when they're ready, so stay tuned. And I do want to mention that next week we have VSR rendering and modeling for ambitious product design. This is our next webinar that's coming up. Michael's going to be joining us from Virtual Shape. So if you guys want to check that out, head on over to novedge.com/webinar/92. And if you guys have any questions, any comments at all, I look forward. I want to hear your feedback as well, so you guys can email me at kevin@novedge.com. So yeah, this webinar is recorded. There's going to be a lot of .coms in this presentation today. But yes, by the end of today, the video should be up at vimeo.com/novedge and youtube.com/novedge as well. So yeah, check it out, like and subscribe. But on behalf of the team at Novedge, Mihai, do you have any last words before we sign off on this presentation today?
Yeah, upgrade to V3.
Yeah, so if you guys celebrate Thanksgiving, this is going to be a great way to celebrate Thanksgiving. So, and yeah, please show us your romantic sunset renders, or make a really huge sun as well. But yeah, follow us on Novedge. Yeah, so you guys have a good one. Cheers. Thank you for joining us. Mihai, thank you. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.